Me too. Did you have like, who did you look up to? Did you look up to anyone like when you got your own show, when that call came in, or even like, did you look up, did you look to your predecessors besides Jerry and say, these are some people that I'd like to?
And like, listen, I always said I couldn't say enough nice things about Jerry. He's been wonderful, but I've never looked up to a talk show host, right? Like, I don't know. To me, it's like a silly job, right? And my job is more serious than like say Jerry or Maury. But like, even when I tell, like, I was in California this weekend, and people are like, oh, so what are you doing? I'm like, I'm a talk show host. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. I don't know why, but it's like, it just feels like a silly job title. Oh, you're a talk show host,
Well, if you ever don't want your talk show host gig and you don't want to say that anymore, here behind the velvet rope, you can just reach out to me and, I will. How about this? When you go on Dancing with the Stars, I will fill in for you. I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
Well, I always joke when they tell you you're going on Dancing with the Stars, your career is over. You're on the downside of things.
So maybe you won't get that call for a very long time.
Well, I just know, like, but the truth of it is, like, I was just in California with my daughter this weekend. She's out in college, and it was parents' weekend. So we flew all the way out, which is a long trip from East Coast all the way out to the West Coast. My daughter's like, Dad, why can't you just be out here? And I said, honey, you know why? Because I got to do my show. And she's like, yeah, but you've been doing it for so long. Why don't you just quit? And I said, maybe that day's coming.
Do your kids watch your show?
No. I mean, does any young people that young or younger watch TV?
No.
Yeah, that's the sad thing.
They don't.
Yeah.
Speaking about people to look up to, even though you don't look up to any talk show hosts, you were on Howard Stern, which I thought was one of the best.
Okay. So if we're going to, like, here, by the way, you're doing a great job because you're hitting things that a lot of people don't hit. When I said, when I traveled with Jerry before I got my own show, I sat through a million interviews, right? Then I've got my own show, and after 15 years, I've done, 1,000 interviews. Howard Stern, there's a reason why that guy's making the money he is, because like you just said, that was the best interview I've ever done or Jerry ever did. And I was sitting there blown away by this guy. So if I'm going to look up to anybody as an interviewer, as a talk show host, I don't know if like a radio talk show host or whatever, he's the best, hands down, and there's nobody even close to him.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
As far as radio and all that.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, like, the interview was, like, he's just talking to you in a way that, was so much, most interviewers go and they go on Wikipedia or whatever they do, and they ask the same damn questions, and Howard he's not that guy.
You guys have similar style though. Like, he's kind of just direct, and I mean, you're kind of direct and you don't beat around the bush. I see similarities there.
But and he's a guy that obviously, whether it's him or his producers or whoever, they obviously do a lot of research before they have a guest come on. Because you get on shows where, like, I've done interviews with people and they're like, oh, so you got your start on Maury Povich. And I'm like, okay, man, you just mailed it in, right? Like, so for me, then the interview just goes south because I'm like, you didn't even try.
Just type it into Wikipedia. They put Maury, Jerry.
Right. They saw Maury's name. They're like, oh, I got to start on Maury. Oh, okay.
You're like, let's move on here.
Yeah.
Well, you have this amazing career, but I have to tell you, one of the highlights for me is your appearances on Miss Brandi Glanville's Unfiltered podcast. I mean, we have a lot of the housewives on this very show here, and talk to me about, Brandi is a huge fan of yours.
Oh, and I don't think I've ever watched any episode of any housewife, but I don't think it's geared towards me, and but I love being on her show, and with her podcast, I think she does a great job. And I always thought that she would make a good daytime talk show host, and I told her that. Just almost impossible to get any do show up on air now, but I thought she would have a lot of appeal, I think, to a daytime audience. I think she does a really good job, and she's a little unfiltered too, which I like.
Unfiltered quite a bit. The housewives, I see some similarities. They have some drama, you
Sure.
resolve dramas.
People like, they're like, that's got to be fixed. I go, listen, no, nothing's fixed. But even like on the Springer Show, do we pump guests up? Of course you do, because if you get somebody who goes out there and sitting on a log and they're not expressive and they're not passionate, like it's boring. So like, yeah, every show wants drama and pump it up, and but anyways, we're talking about Brandi Glanville and how, when we talk about housewives and how you want to get guests pumped up, and people say, about, oh, this is fake, that's fake, the housewives. And I'm like, even people on my show will come on like, you're just doing this show for ratings. I'm like, yeah. I mean, what do you think I'm doing it for? Like, this isn't a charity, it's a TV show. You see the cameras there? Like, I'm not trying to hide anything. Every TV show does it for the ratings. What are you talking about?
It's like, why is that always such a dirty word? People say things like that to me all the time. I'm like, this is a business. Like, I mean, yes. I love it. I love my job, but.
Right. But like, you're doing it for ratings. Yeah, that's why I'm standing on this stage. Like, like, do you get satisfaction of doing a show like I do, like helping people? Like, we did a show where this woman said, like, you arrested me and you changed my life. Do I get satisfaction in that? Hell yeah. But if that didn't rate, guess what? I would never do that story again.
Absolutely. What could we expect different on season 15? Like, how will season 15 be different of the Steve Wilkos Show?
Well, I think over the last couple of years, you've seen a shift into, we're doing real crime stories. And sometimes it's even a story that we don't have to give a lie detector test on our show, but it's somebody that has spent, 25 years in prison and they were unjustly accused or convicted. And we've done some stories like that this year, and just talking to these people about how they were able to overcome that and what their experience was like. So, but we also shifted to where we're working on unsolved crimes, things of that nature. And so the people really seem to eat that up. It falls really, like I said, neatly. And for me, being a police officer, former investigator, so I've always enjoyed that type of topic anyways. We still do, once in a while do the cheating, the love thing, or, whatever, DNA. But our show is basically true crime now.
Do you find like one common theme with all this true crime, like where someone's like, convicted incorrectly and they spend like a number of years? I mean,
well, we've done that show. We're getting a couple of those more this year. We had a few of those last year. And to me, it's always fascinating because, I don't know if I could last a week in prison, right? Maybe not a couple nights, but when you're facing, like this one guy, he was facing life without parole. How do you go in and succeed? And this one guy, he went in and he hit the library and did his own appeals, and he eventually got out. And when you think about something like that, I mean, I guess, you do find it, but man, it's hard to imagine that you're going life in prison and you're like, okay. I mean, I think I'd just crawl up and die,
I would think that I would do the same, but like you say, like your work ethic, maybe you'd be surprised at yourself. Maybe
right, because I think deep down in you would do something to say, okay, I'm going to try to get out of here. Whether it's carving a hole in the wall like Shawshank Redemption, or like this guy going to the library and getting appealed and getting yourself out.
Absolutely. Do you ever get starstruck? I mean, you've met so many people through your job.
There's a couple guys I've met in my life where I was really starstruck. One was Michael Jordan, when I met him. And I met him a few times, and even every time you almost feel like this guy's got like an aura around him, And then the other guy that I was totally starstruck, because I watched him since I was a little kid, was Muhammad Ali. I mean, I met him in Detroit at a baseball game, and the security came in and said, hey, Muhammad Ali's next door. Would you like to meet him? I'm like, I thought they were messing around with me. Like, what's he doing at a Tigers game? And I went in, and there he was. And like, he was talking to me, telling me jokes. And this guy was probably the most famous person on our planet. So yeah, those two guys, I was, definitely starstruck.
What about the opposite, when people come up and are starstruck by you? Have you had any strange fan interactions?
Well, I'm always like, most people are really like level-headed when they meet. We're like, hey, Steve. Like one guy on the plane yesterday, we were getting off at the same time. He just starts talking to me like so conversationalist. I had to look at the guy. I'm like, do I know this guy? Because he's like, hey, Steve, were you in Cal? And then he kept talking. I'm like, maybe I know this guy, and like, but he was just a fan. But then there are people that are over the top. They're like, I go, you're not meeting Mick Jagger, man. Like, calm down. I'm just a talk show. So, but it is nice. And I've ran into people that actually have like me tattooed on them, and I'm like, okay, you went over the line there. You shouldn't have done that.
You're like, how did this come about?
Yeah, like not a good waste, kind of a waste of money.
Well, one great byproduct, Jerry Springer didn't just give you your own show. It gave you, I mean, you got the girl. So
yeah.
How is your wife doing?
She's great, man. She she had a long battle with breast cancer, and she's all done. She's all done with chemo, and it's kind of one of those things you got to wait for 5 years to like say all clear. But no, she's done amazing, and hopefully we're out of the woods.